Well, I want to save enough time for us to talk a little bit about vinyl record collecting because this
Yeah.
is
Well,
our
first of
music
all,
episode.
Brian, we've got to talk to you. What is this fascination with Lawrence Welk? Is this like your second album now that I saw the other day? Your second? Is this something from your childhood? Did your grandparents watch Lawrence Welk show or?
Well, my grandpa loved Lawrence Welk, and again,
Okay,
this
so
is
mine was my grandma. She loved Lawrence Welk, and my grandfather was a hee haw man. So
sure.
we had the best of both worlds.
Well, this just shows you how much on the same page Duane and I are on because this is a great segue into the vinyl talk that we're going to have. So I posted a few days ago. This was on a trip out to Pennsylvania. We went
Yep, I saw
to
that. Yeah.
we went to Penn State. My oldest, a cadet up at West Point, and he plays on their club hockey team. And so West Point was playing Penn State at the time. And so
Which
my
is
wife and I,
awesome. Awesome, by the way.
oh,
Awesome.
yeah, we're so proud of him.
And
He's done a
and
fantastic
kind of
job.
seeing the kids grow up and see he's doing that now and knowing their love of hockey is and Brian's love of hockey and so
I don't love hockey anymore. That's a whole nother thing. I have a love hate relationship with hockey, and it's hate for the
burnt.
last few
Yeah.
years.
Well, we photographed hockey together as
Oh,
well.
that's right.
So
Yeah. Okay.
all
Well,
right,
see,
back
we've done a
back
lot
to
of
the
things
albums.
together.
Back to the albums. Yes, yes, yes.
So whenever we go somewhere nowadays, I always like to try to find out a record store that's there just to kind of see what's in that region, what could be at this particular record store that I can get pretty cheap. And one of the records I came across at this record store was a brand new sealed Lawrence Welk show box collector set, 6 albums in it for $3.
Yeah,
Am I a
that was
Lawrence
an awesome
Welk
price.
Am I a Lawrence Welk fan? No. Do I know who he is? Kind of. The
Yep, yep, yep,
champagne music guy, right? Big
yep.
band, and I think SNL back in the early 2000s did some skits of Lawrence Welk, and everything's kind of funny. But it was just music that my grandfather kind of grew up with, and even up until when he passed a few years ago, he was always kind of the big band music guy. It wasn't my thing growing up. But I saw this brand new box set, and I was like, for $3, I've got to get this.
Which
And
sounds like it's in great shape, by the way. The album you played
oh
on
yeah,
your reel there, it was like I was like, wow, that
it's in
sounds
beautiful
like it's in
shape.
great shape. Yeah.
It sounds fantastic. And so here's the thing, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are with the whole collecting of vinyl and how you look at records and everything. My thing is, I got into music mid 80s. I never got into vinyl back then. My mom had some. We had some around the house, but when I started buying my own music, it started with cassette tapes and then CDs right away. And I thought records were a thing of the past, and I didn't think much of it. The last
Yeah.
few years, I kind of got sucked into the craze that it's kind of come back around a little bit. And I was like, every time I went to a bookstore or walked by a record store, it was always fun to go in. My thing is, do I need a hobby aside from podcasting or photography that's super expensive? No, I don't need to do this, but there's something about physically holding media like a record, a big 12-inch cardboard sleeve, the smell of it, the feel of it, the touch of it.
Yeah.
There's just something about it. And getting
Do
into
you
it, I was like, go ahead.
do you read the liner notes and all
I
that?
I will sit down and kind of as it's playing because you have to listen to the whole thing. It's not like
Hmm.
you're skipping through or you're making a playlist or something. You sit down as the artist wants you to listen to that album. So
Yep.
I'll sit down when nobody's in the house, the lights are off, I'm enjoying a nice little drink, and I have a little bit of a light to where I can kind of look through the liners and just kind of see everything. But my thing with getting into the record collecting is I didn't want to necessarily replicate what my CD collection looks like down in my basement that is now all in a plastic tub. I probably have 1,000 CDs that
Yep.
are in there.
Kind of the same. Still have them. Yep.
And I would say probably a good, conservatively speaking, 50% of those CDs are from bands that I'm like, and when I grew up, I was like, ugh. I look back now, I'm like, boy, that was one hit wonder. But I have my own musical tastes. But I was like, I'm not gonna spend money on the vinyl of certain artists that or bands that I once got. I want to make this a concerted effort into discovering new music that I never really got into. So it's very much it's a thought process of going in. I want to discover music that will open me up to a few new things. My ultimate favorite artists or bands, then I will look to get the vinyl for. So that's my strategy on this. So the Lawrence Welk that you brought up, and a friend of mine, Amanda, she asked the same thing that you did, which is why this is a great topic for us to start on. Because when I posted that thing on Instagram of Lawrence Welk and playing the first song, but do you like it? And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, short answer is yes or no. But the longer form answer to this is it's opening me up to listening to music that I'm not necessarily, I never gave a chance to before. And again, this was something that my grandfather really liked. So I think that's a cool connection there. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what he was kind of into. So putting the record down and listening to it as it was spinning around, I liked it. I enjoyed it. Is it something that I'm like, God damn, I want to listen to this again tonight when I'm doing work in the yard or fixing the car or something? Probably not. But for a night to where maybe
not like Taylor Swift or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, but the Taylor Swift is on the same lines, and I'm going to get into that. But so the Lawrence Welk thing is something that I'm like, maybe if the wife and I are cooking dinner, we're having a date night, got some wine going, that would be one of the perfect albums to put on. Or you're playing cards with another couple or something. That's the Lawrence Welk album and why I ended up getting it. Taylor Swift is the same thing, and I know I don't know if I'm getting some side eye from you on that. I wasn't initially into Taylor Swift. Not my thing. Not my generational type thing. I acknowledge she had some pop hits, some songs that they're catchy. I like them, but I never had anything like anti-Taylor. So
until now, where she's dating Travis Kelce and she's kind of gone from your chances now, but
so my thing with Taylor Swift was the last few years. One of my friends is a huge Swiftie. You know, the big Taylor Swift fans. They're called Swifties, and I interviewed her on the podcast, and just talking to her and the whole phenomenon. Whether you like her or not, Taylor Swift is a mega phenomenon. And I'm like, this is interesting. The stories behind everything that she has going on and the re-recording of her albums, which I think is totally boss. I was like, this is interesting. So at the time, that was when her album Midnights was coming out. Again, not a very casual fan. And then here I am after that podcast I did. I went out and bought 4 copies of the 4 alternative albums just to make a stupid clock, which I have no business doing of waste of money. But I kind of got into it. So now I'm totally Taylor Swift. I got some people that love that about it. And then I have friends on social media that absolutely hate her. I get it, but that's why. So Lawrence Welk, Taylor Swift, Bruce Springsteen, Smashing Pumpkins, these are all bands and artists, Duane, that I didn't give a chance to growing up. It wasn't my thing, but I think it's kind of cool that vinyl collecting is something to where it's, if there's certain records and albums you're going to get into and on vinyl, these are probably the ones to give it a shot, give it a try. I like them. All of these ones, I like the ones that I've gotten. It's different from the ones to where I'm like, that's my jam. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And so my album collecting is kind of rebuilding, but it's also, so many years ago when CDs came out, I pretty much threw all my albums in the trash. And because I was like, oh, CDs are the next big thing. So I don't need all this big vinyl sitting around. So, which I kicked myself because I had some great vintage albums. Part of it's rebuilding, but part of it is new artists I've discovered in the past 10 years or so. And they're putting stuff out on vinyl. And it's like, oh man, this is really great. But also I have that connection with my grandparents as well. Not so much my grandmother's music, like Lawrence Welk and all those things. My grandfather was old country. He listened to Johnny Cash, listened to, I don't know if you've ever heard the songwriter Tom T. Hall, but he was big fans of him, and he used to have him on 8-track, and we used to listen to him in his truck. And I'm a big Willie Nelson fan, and I I'm up to probably 10 Willie Nelson albums now.
I've got
But
that's an album that I have in my collection now. Is Willie Nelson? What's the Poncho and Lefty?
Poncho and Lefty with Merle Haggard. That's
Merle
a
Haggard.
great. Yep, that's a
Music
great album.
and people that
Yep.
I've heard of, but I was like, this is not my style. I am now sitting down and opening myself up. Well, let's listen to it, and I like it.
If you want a great recorded album, get Willie Nelson's Stardust. It is a you can hear his guitar breathe. It is just it's a incredible recording, and it's just something you can listen to. And Willie's voice is perfect. That album's probably getting on to 40 years old now. Like some of these, you hear the recording technology that they had back then. To think of what they did with that, not half the technology they have now. But you think back to how they recorded it, and you listen to that Stardust, and you're like, wow, this was done with little technology, but sounds amazing. Hats off to those guys that engineered those albums back then. And so I've got a couple albums here lately, newer artists within the past 10 years. One is a band called Blackberry Smoke. They're kind of Southern rock, kind of Leonard Skinner type. They're doing some things called direct to vinyl recording. They did a complete album of Rolling Stones covers in that format, but it's basically they record, they go straight through, no stopping, like they're playing a live show, and they cut it directly to vinyl. Yeah, there's a company called Welcome to 1972 doing this thing. Another band, which he's kind of a blues artist, Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown. They're big in Texas. They just did an album through that same company with the same concept, direct playing live, cut it to vinyl, and just amazing though, and how good it sounds, and how basically a live recording without the audience, and they cut it straight to vinyl. Pretty talented musicians to pull that off as well. Just go song to song, no stopping. And
do you use your records percentage wise versus streaming? Or I don't know if you still listen to any of your CDs or anything, but what's the percentage breakdown of when you're listening to music on a weekly basis? How much time is that when you're pulling out a record versus you're streaming it on your phone or wherever? You know what I'm saying?
We're probably 75-25, 75 to the streaming and 25 to vinyl. The missus was not the biggest fan of the whole stereo rig out in the living room, so I had to bring it into my man cave where we're recording this now. Sure. in the office. The sound quality is not quite as good as it was out in the living room. Anyway, so that kind of detracts from my listening here in the office. But sometimes I've got a nice newer receiver which hooks up to the Bluetooth, and I'll put on the headphones and shoot the vinyl through the headphones.
Nice like little Spotify. Drink in hand and
yeah, either that or I'm editing. I've got Spotify. Spotify is a great thing because I have Release Radar, which kind of geared to me, which stuff I like. Every Friday it's updated, and you get to hear some new music, and sometimes they'll throw a curveball in there and something you're not expecting. There's just so much great music out there that doesn't make it to the radio. It's just amazing. And so there's so much talent out there that's not discovered, but that's kind of the way it's always been. You know, when I photograph a concert, sometimes I'll see an opening act that's just, and sometimes the opening act's better than the headliner, and you're like, wow, these guys are really good. I got to see, do you know who Jelly Roll is?
I've heard of him.
So Jelly Roll is kind of on the countryside, country rap, but he opened for Shinedown last year, and I got to photograph both of them. And I was actually thinking while Jelly Roll was on stage, it was the first time I'd photographed Shinedown, and while Jelly Roll was on stage, I'm like, oh my, Shinedown's going to have to bring it because this dude is really, really good. And so, and now he's went on, and I believe he just recently won some awards, and he has quite a story. He has a jail story. He didn't start out with there's a lot of aspiring rappers in jail. So, but apparently he was in county jail quite a bit, and he used to rap in there, and he kind of...
Never in St. Louis, right? You never...
I don't know.
Booked him or anything?
Hey, little secret. Chuck Berry was in our jail in St. Louis. So.
Oh. We're definitely going to have to hit some stories.
Not while I was there, but that was many, many years ago. But I think I can say that with Chuck being passed now. But I got to meet Chuck. Oh, geez, a weeknight, like a Wednesday night at the casino there in St. Charles. I'd seen him in there before. He used to go through the the Prestige entrance over there on the side. He was waiting on his table to open up, and he was sitting on a bench. Like I said, it was like a Wednesday night. Well, I'd always seen him, and I was like, I'm not going to bug him while he's eating or anything like that. And he was always eating, so I didn't bug him. That night, he was sitting on the bench, and I walked up to him and said, Mr. Berry, big fan. And he shook my hand and said, I appreciate it, man. And the man had some very large hands. So anyway, yeah, that was one of my few cool celebrity stories, but yep, just meeting Chuck Berry on a Wednesday night in the casino was kind of awesome.
That is cool. So I'm going to bring the podcast to a close here.
So
there's
soon?
definitely
My God.
a lot of things that at some point we're going to do another episode, and I want some more correction officer stories that we can get into. And I think touching base more on the music side, I want to get more into records and stuff. So here's my last question to you. Of all the people that you have photographed in concert, which ones do you have their actual vinyl for that you went out and got? But like Carrie Underwood, do you have a Carrie Underwood vinyl?
I do not. I'm kind of like you
worthy?
with Taylor Swift, just kind of a casual fan. So actually, the only song I really knew her, I knew like two going in, and if you go read my review, it kind of touches that. The main one, of course, Before He Cheats, and that was about it. And I knew like one other song, so I mean, kind of a casual fan. I liked her voice when she first came out, but I never really followed her career. But no, I have no Carrie. So yeah, Willie Nelson. I haven't photographed him with a cell phone.
The question is, of the ones that you photographed for your concert photography, which ones do you have the actual vinyl albums for?
Blackstone Cherry. They come to mind. So I've actually got a couple of theirs, and Blackberry Smoke, the other. I've got all these black bands that I like. So surprisingly enough, with the Blackstone Cherry album, unbeknownst to me, it arrived. It was signed by the whole band. And so I didn't know they were doing that. It wasn't announced, and I was like, oh, this is really awesome. So
actual signatures, not like printed on there?
Yes. No, they're hand signed. Yes.
Wow. So, that is pretty neat. That's a lot better than the Lionel Richie album that I picked up. And when I opened it up, I was like, and that was another one that was $3, but it was signed Lionel Richie with a little note, and I was like, "Is this an actual signature?
Is it personalized or?"
Well, that's what I thought.
Have like somebody's name or?
Exactly what it says. I wasn't sure. I was going through the $3 bin, and I was like, "Did this get by somebody and they didn't know?" And so I was like, "I'm gonna have to get it." And it turns, I got home. Actually, I got back to our bed and breakfast. This was also in Pennsylvania, and I told my wife about it.
You cleaned up in Pennsylvania, didn't you?
And I love the album anyways. The songs on there I do love, but I ended up buying it just on a speculation that, oh my God, I might have a Lionel Richie signed album. And it turned out all the albums were like that. It was just printed on the cardboard.
Yeah, you never know. Album collection in front of me, but it's dark and I'm old, and like I told you before we started, I can't see because I'm old.
No, we'll leave that. We'll leave that for the next one then. So, Duane, I appreciate you spending a good hour or so with me tonight, talking a little concert photography, reminiscing about the old times of working with you on several gigs that we did together, and me cursing your name for leaving me the last 2 years, and then kind of touching a little bit on vinyl collecting. And at some point I'm probably gonna have you open my mind up to 2 or 3 artists or bands that aren't necessarily in my wheelhouse that I'll be on the lookout for, just to discover. Like I said, I'm using 50% of this vinyl collection for discovery of new music, and I would love to have something that you like to discover myself.
Quick one we had just a few weeks ago. I was in Walmart. I was looking for a band called the Steel Woods, which I've seen their albums in Walmart before, but they had a new album come out beginning of October. Me and a gentleman, he was looking through vinyl, and we got to talking. We were about the same age bracket. Told him go check them out. So I don't know if he did or not, but it was but we stood there and talked about life for 10 or 15 minutes. So it was kind of refreshing, and maybe I turned him on to a new artist as well. So,
all right, Duane, I appreciate it, and we are going to end the recording now.